The American Models kit comes with a single two-sided instruction sheet. The parts are a combination of styrene, etched brass, a bit of wire, and some string. The first step is to assemble the sand storage bin at the top of the tower. There's a top, a bottom, a middle, and 5 brackets. Easy. 2 hinges are added to the bottom for the sanding arms. And then the main support column is added between the 2 hinges. Installation of the base plate is next. There's a pre-drilled hole in it to help locate the sand filler pipe. I used a needle nose file to widen it just a touch. The sand filler pipe is a single casting with a button hook on the end, so it needs to be threaded from a hole in the top plate and down the side of the support column to the hole in the base plate. The next step is to install the ladder. There are 4 support brackets plus another 4 brackets to stabilize the support column to the base plate. With all these parts installed, we can now turn our attention to the etched brass safety cage and safety railings for the top of the tower. Once these are cut loose from their sprue, they need to be rolled into shape. I used a pencil to shape the safety cage for the ladder, and I used a thicker marker to roll the handrails for the top of the tower. These need to be attached using ACC, but fortunately the kit is very well designed and there are actual slots in the ladder supports where these fit in. Here's a look at the completed main structure from top to bottom. The next step is adding on the side sand chutes. There are 2 pulleys that are added to the underside of the top of the tower lid. These are for the counterweights. The 2 sanding arms are connected to the hinges on the underside of the sand storage bin. I reamed out the openings in the arm hinges a little bit just to make sure that the arms would be more easily positionable after it's painted. I also reamed out the holes in the cast soft metal counterbalance weights. These will be added at the very end of the project. The actual sand delivery hoses are made from 20 gauge wire that's provided with the kit. This is important because the hoses actually have to be formed to clear the sides of the locomotives that pass under the tower. On the prototype, there are secondary pulleys that control the movement of these hoses. These, of course, aren't modeled. I gave the almost finished model a coat of flat black paint and put it aside temporarily while I figure out where it's actually going to go in the diesel shop area. All that's left to do is attach the sand filler hoses and shape them correctly, as well as the pulleys and counterweights. As mentioned in an earlier video, I've never been quite happy with my diesel shop layout. I received a number of suggestions from viewers and I had a number of other ideas of my own, and so I'm going to walk you through those here. One idea was to add a short fuel delivery track for a tank car next to the fuel tank that was just built. This would have required a very sharp turnout. You see a number 6 in the photo here. We'd need at least a number 4 turnout to make the curve fit, and we'd lose some capacity in the diesel shop itself, having to keep that track clear for delivery of the fuel. This would of course also require a major rebuilding of the trackage in this area. Another idea was to replace the left-hand number 6 with a 3-way number 6 turnout. This would simply add another full-length track in the diesel shop, Not a bad idea to have more trackage and capacity, but I've never been fond of three-way turnouts. And that, again, would be a major rebuilding or removal of the existing track and ballast in the area. If increased locomotive storage capacity was the only goal of this exercise, there are lots of ways to accomplish that, but it really, fills the space up with track completely and eliminates the long layover track that's good for a 4-unit consist. A less crowded idea was to realign the layover track, making it parallel with the shop tracks, so maintaining that 4 consist capacity, but adding an additional track that maybe would hold, let's say, 2 locomotive consist. This concept does allow for vehicular traffic to make its way through the facility. Always a good idea to make sure that your trucks can make deliveries and your staff can get in and out. But it really limits the building itself to a storage shed as opposed to a shop or company offices. It was at this point that I revisited the new Walters diesel shop, checking the actual dimensions, finding it's 8¼ inches wide by 18½ inches long. The length wasn't so much a problem as was the width, because 8¼ inches would take you basically from the retaining wall to the realigned layover track. And this doesn't include any space for the office building, and it would also require both tracks to be fully removed and reinstalled at different track centers. Ultimately, you'd need a little bit of space between the retaining wall and the building itself, at least a ½ inch to walk around it. So you'd be pushing up against the new layover track. So unfortunately, there really isn't room for the new Walters kit to be used in this area. So in the end, it looks like we've come almost full circle. I do want to have company offices. I do want a building that's more than just a train shed, but something more like a shop. So in the end, what we're going to do is modify what we have to provide some separation between the doors to the shop and the sand tower, while at the same time giving the whole building a unified look. Previously, it looked like a 2-track shed, but up against a shop building, an office building. So we're going to modify the architecture slightly. That will be the subject of our next video. In the meantime, we'll continue fiddling around with exact placement of the sand tower. But for now, let's watch one last installment of switching on the Q&NE. This is the final installment of what has turned into a 20-video series, which started last September, September 16th, on video number 123. This series of videos has covered a day in the life of the Quebec and New England Railroad in this location, including all the industrial switching, interchange with Conrail, road trains arriving and departing. With a crew of at least 3 operators, what you have seen in these 20 videos has been crammed into as little as 3 hours in an operating session, as long as 7 hours. But there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed it. This, as I say, is the last piece as we finish putting away the last few cars in the interchange yard. Here we see our GP10, number 70, pulling out some cars destined to the automobile parts stamping plant. We have a couple of 60-foot auto parts cars, and they'll be set over to the far lead to shove down into the plant. After spotting the two auto parts cars, our GP10 makes a switchback move to get on the opposite side of the CN boxcar you see in the foreground that needs to be spotted at the cereals plant for loading. With this move into the cereals plant, all of the customers have been serviced today. The cars remaining in the yard are either cars that are constructively placed for the next operating session or cars that are destined northbound on tomorrow morning's Quebec and New England outbound train. After a hard day's work, our crew heads off to the yard office to book off for the night. Shortly after this video was filmed, the Q&NE held its first live operating session in 3 long years. That's me on the left, Sheldon, Joe in the middle, and Stephen on the right. Welcome back, guys.